What's going on, everyone? YGOPD here. It's been a minute since I've uploaded, but I'm really excited to do something very special for 2K. I've been trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a long time, and my good friend Alex here, you've probably seen him all over the space. Tons of regional tops, a few YCS tops, and just had a chance to play at YCS Pittsburgh, and he's kind of been really tearing it up with RB a lot. So I wanted to. He actually reached out to me to have him featured, and so I wanted to take some time to talk through everything RB, his choices, kind of going through YCS Pittsburgh, all that stuff. I'll let you kind of intro yourself too if you want.
Sounds good. Yeah, so my name's Alex Mondlak. For those that may not be aware, I have currently three YCS tops, but the most notable one was my first one where I top aided YCS Chicago in 2019 with Cyber Dragon. Kind of started the SEMO meme a bit. And yeah, and then the other two were during Cashier format, but pretty much like a lot of day twos, like a lot of regional top eights, and mainly like most of, I would say the regional community probably tends to be aware of me tending to play wacky deck
Yep.
choices.
Yep.
And the most recent one was RB actually, where I finished 10-4 at YCS Pittsburgh, finished 40th place. Had a really strong start at 8-1, but had some bad luck near tail end, which is honestly gonna discuss because I goes to the cons of the deck moments at times. But overall, I'm not disappointed. Like I only won 4 die rolls that whole day, and if I recall correctly, like 6 of my opponents were in top 32, and then 3 of them top eighted.
Yeah.
So it was like definitely like a tough Swiss tournament in general, no matter what deck I was on. But I was very happy with how the engine specifically performed in the future it has going forward.
So tell me why, I guess, because I know a lot of people were curious, what gravitated you toward RB for this event? I know just from us personally, other people might not know you've been testing it for a while, but what made you kind of pick that as a deck for the event?
Yeah, so the big thing that initially got me interested in the deck was stage landing itself. Like during the wave one support, what I found was it trades really well into a lot of boards, like going into it, like the destruction protection against a Mitsu board wipe is just crazy.
Yeah.
And then Funk Doc's a crazy card as well, like against cards like Nibiru
Yeah.
or other spot removal.
Right.
So that's what initially started the interest, but then the Wave 2 support came out
Yeah.
where it fixed a lot of the problems. Like, obviously, it wasn't like picture perfect support, like, no deck is going to be perfect anyway.
Right.
But the niche of being not just like a Norai in the deck, you actually can interact with the opponent's hand in Lambda Cannon,
Yeah.
and you usually do it in 4 summons. I felt like was a niche
Mm.
worth using. And then, of course, as well, like non-engine lineup as well, which is during the deck profile, we can go into that a bit more. But it was a combination of the non-engine it could run and how the engine itself plays into the boards, which considering I won 4 die rolls and had to break most of the boards game one,
Yeah.
I felt like it definitely proved the engine itself proved why it was worth it.
What made you land on the Sky Striker variant as opposed to like Cyber Dragon, Mecha Phantom Beast, or Orchist, or any of the other variants?
Yeah, so and that one was like the $1,000,000 question, honestly, going into this YCS because going into it, like, unless people were, like, testing the format thoroughly, kind Draco Tail took a lot of people by surprise, and I was anticipating Draco Tail from what people were testing and from what people were telling me
Yeah.
as well. So the biggest niche that the Striker engine has, mainly in Cynos, was it doesn't need to take up your normal summon, which is a big deal going into something like a Draco Tail Horn.
Yeah.
Like you can summon the pieces in defense, like you summon Cynos in defense, summon Rose in defense, and you play around the horn.
Yeah.
Whereas Grisu, Cyber Dragon, they can run in not only into stuff like Horn, but they also run in Droll. Like, I was anticipating a lot of Droll, and Cynos lets you set up a Shepherd under a Droll, hypothetically.
Yeah.
Like, even, like, if you begin with the Cynos as well, like, you're not even, like, really having a Droll happen until the first searcher happens off of Falcon Booster.
Yeah.
And the important thing, which, people were asking me a lot was, "Oh, off the first search, what do you grab? Do you grab the Funk and just put them on Bear App Droll?" Because for people that may not be aware, Funk is a mandatory add by Lordy Load.
Yeah.
So, like, when you're playing the deck, if you add Funk and they add Droll, you can't put the Funk dock down.
Right. Yeah.
So my first search is usually grabbing a stage landing because if they have Droll, you just still set up around it completely. Like you get
Yeah.
the end board at that point is a Shepherd sword. The sword mills apart with a set trap,
Mm,
and that's
yeah.
sure you don't have a hypothetical Funk Dock float, but you can't play it anyway. But it's if they don't have Droll though, you can go into Brute Blues, grab your Funk then, and then do whatever.
Right.
But that's how you pass like a Droll check and set up the board properly.
Right.
a- And that's what Cynos provides, considering not just the horn benefit, it not taking up the normal if you don't need it to.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of all that, and then of course the non-engine as well,
Yeah.
which at the YCS it was shifter was the biggest thing
Yeah.
that I wanted in because of Draco Tail.
Right.
And Cynos, for those that aren't aware, its graveyard effect can get a rose back from banish. So like if you're doing your turn one plays like one card stars and rose gets banished, your turn 3, all you need is just, like, get a Cynos engraved and your rose comes back. The others I got was how often did I summon Seek and Azalea? The honest answer was a lot. Like, yeah, they're kind of the more flexible slots because some people, like, usually the RB engine itself, like, a lot of people are pretty set on, like, 12 extra deck cards typically.
Yeah.
And it's like it makes sense for those, but then you have the last remaining 3 slots, and that usually kind of comes down to what sub-engines people are on and such. And the biggest thing I wanted was I wanted my entire extra deck to be usable under a stage landing for 1, but 2, Seek came up, like, especially a lot because if you're, like, Lambican special and you began with a Cynos, usually you can go Seek, remove the card that you summon in their side without needing to burn apart. So you can set up
Yeah.
Cutter, Sword, instead of having to go for Driller to possibly clean up the guy that you gave them to their side. Instead, you just go Seek, link up the Seek, summon Brute. Azalea, though, was like the more rare one, but it did come up at
Yeah.
times.
Would you say that, like, you could get away with 2 Zeke instead of an Azalea? The reason I ask is because I'm sure people are in a similar situation. I had my striker stuff just sitting, and I was like, "Oh, Azalea spiked to 30. I'm getting rid of it." And then it's like I start seeing it come up here and there. So, do you think it's still, like, mandatory moving forward, at least at 1?
I wouldn't say it's mandatory. Like, you realistically could play a second Seek over it,
Yeah.
but where Azalea specifically kind of comes in is if you get like Nibiru playing into a board, like you can have Azalea have its moments. But if somebody were come up to me and be like, "Hey, was this like completely necessary? Did this dictate your tournament results?" The honest answer is not really,
Okay.
but it just helps that it's there. Is kind of the honest answer to that.
Yeah. Cool.
People ask me, they're like, "Oh, how do you like lethal with Danko on the normal?" And the usual answer that I give is if you open the RB parts first, you summon them usually in defense if you're going up in Draco Tail, special, ask what if they got anything in particular. You try bait out interruptions initially, that would be reserved for Danko,
Right.
and then you normal the Danko.
Yeah.
But the easy mode is if you open any of the RB spells, which is what happened in the round 10 feature where the guy had to commit to his allure. He whiffed on the allure actually, so he got unlucky in that regard. But because he had no cards in hand, other than the March Hare that he added later on, I was like, okay, he's only got March Hare, normal Danko, stage landing, brute. Yeah, it was like brute, add funk, funk, add another stage, summon out rocket, and then you could go rocket pop, and then you summon out pile bunker, and then you clean up the board, and that's more than lethal.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so going to a slightly updated deck profile, pretty much the main deck and extra deck are going to be the same of what I use at the YCS for those that already seen it. But for those that don't, I'm going to just kind of explain a little bit, assuming that, probably majority of people may not have seen that yet. But kind of going on to the RB ratios, this is what I main decked for the event and what I'm still currently main decking. So compared to a lot of lists, like the main deck is in fact got slightly more engine compared to most lists. I've seen a lot of lists cut out both the Falcon Rocket and the Pile Bunker. The reason why I keep these in anyway is the analogy I always tell people is this is like Machine Malice. Like, you can have some games where you could just quite literally throw bodies at the problem and it helps solve it. But the biggest reason why I keep these guys in is because with Draco Tail picking up more steam as well, these both help clean up the board. Like, when they're setting up their turn 3 pushes on you and you're trying to, like, okay, mitigate through it, like, the only resources that are going to matter if you have these guys in your deck are the ones they add to hand, which is going to be usually significantly smaller compared to a Rahu set, a Ketu set, some other stuff they might set here and there, like if they want to get a trap for a turn 3 push if you made them end on a half board while they were going first. So overall, like, I like how this goes. The last card that initially came in my main deck that was in the side for a while was Next Phase.
Yeah, I was going to ask how you felt about that.
So Next Phase I felt like was good, like, during the event, and then, like, it's still gonna be in, honestly, because the big reason why I put it in was because I was anticipating a lot more people be on hand traps and stuff like a Nibiru. And so with Next Phase, it has a unique niche of just actually being able to get you a monster negate specifically for like their starter monsters, and with it being a counter trap, it's not like they can find mana out of it. Or if you're going up against like Mitsuyami, you can even hit something like a Habakiri, and that's relevant. Like, normally you're supposed to ash like a Saji, but if you actually get rid of the Habakiri body, if they hard open a ritual or something, it's not like they're going to be able to advance their game state that much further if that happens to them. So overall, I'm going to keep this in, but the one thing I was admittedly iffy about is it does give you in total 4 garnets with being these 2 traps and the 2 dark RBs. Like, they're the hard garnets no matter what. Like, you can't easily get them out of your hand. And so, unlike the other parts where, any 2 parts, full combo, you're fine. But overall, like, I would keep this as it is, especially the Rocket and Pile, where they can let you lethal in under 5 summons so easily.
Yeah, dude, it's so good.
Yeah, and so in particular for those that may not have even used them, because I know met a lot of RB players where they've seen lists that don't use them and don't understand alliance with them. How you like OTK in like 3 summons hypothetically, like a stage landing resolved, is you go, all right, stage landing, you get Brute out, Brute grabs Funk Dock, you get another stage landing, and then you go Rocket, Rocket pop itself, pop a card they have, you somehow pile bunker, and Rocket does around 1,000, 1,500, depending on how many cards you popped. But then the Brute and the pile bunker do 75, and that's lethal. Yeah. Like, it's just like, if you're in a simplified game state, that's how you can OTK without needing to do stuff like Lamba and such, which I have done. Like, if some people have passed it on like a very low board, I'm assuming they're mostly having hand traps. Yeah. And so I tend to play a little bit more conservatively around that in mind. And that's how essentially I go about it. Like, you don't really need a like Lamba in cases like that as much. Yeah. And then kind of going on to the supplements here, it's the Sky Striker package. So the Sky Striker package actually played a large role in why I was okay finally main decking the next phase, because the biggest thing I really wanted was I wanted my non-engine and one card starter math to line up. If you count Pross as a one card starter, it's 15, if I'm recalling my math correctly. But then you have a bunch of 1.5s where, two machine bodies, you're ready to go. But the reason that Sky Striker specifically really kind of stuck out on me is it did polish up my going second math, in particular with Anchor, on top of the Cynos benefit, where if you count Anchor with Engage, it's in total, it's like 19 non-engine cards, if you count it like that. Yeah. And so, and that was relevant. Like, in my final match, actually, against Dracotail, the biggest thing that ended up happening was when I drew my Pankratops, I did have a Whale Anchor, so I was able to hit the Grand Goal. I always butcher the name. The Gulmel, Gulmel, the pop one. I hit the pop, and then I summoned Pank, and then I started pressuring the board. But the other reason why Whale Anchor is such a specific good card is it can help back up the Danko Sekka that's sided. Yeah. Like, because a lot of the threats to Danko tend to be IP, Gulmel, and this card checks that. You just go, all right, activate Anchor, hit the Danko check, and then Danko cleans up a lot of the rest of the board state. And then going on to the non-engine in particular, 3 Fua, 3 Bell, 3 Imperm, the evil card, and then 3 Ash, and then technically non-engine, but it's kind of just any card in the deck. So, but the big non-engine cards that actively interact with the opponent are these here. Yeah. And I still have no regrets about this lineup. Like, this lineup was, I would say, genuinely perfect for the main deck, at least. Like, given just how diverse my matchups were throughout the day. And Shifter in particular, is Shifter. And I get a lot of questions, actually, people asking me. They're like, hey, like, how do you set up around a Shifter in mind, actually? And so the big thing about it that I always tell people is you usually can just set up as normal, because it's like, sure, the parts are gone permanently after they're used, but if you hold off your opponent's plays, because they're usually way more limited than they otherwise would be, you just go, all right, I'm going to summon Rocket, summon Pile, and just go for lethal the following turn. And that was usually the pace of it when it came to Shifter. The only times Shifter can be weird in respect to this engine itself is if you don't open a one-card starter with it. You have to burn 2 parts to attempt to play. At that point, sometimes, like, depending if I have our non-engine, sometimes, like, I just pass. Like, because if you have Shifter or other non-engine,
you reasonably can survive, and then you just push back at them with a half board because this deck trades so favorably into boards as it is that I'm like, okay, survive off a shifter if I didn't open a 1-card starter to, mitigate the costs of the cards permanently going away. And then, try to survive on our non-engine. So that is indeed a con when it comes to this card. But the way I tell people is, it's like, I'm trying to recall the math off of 15 1-card starters in the main, but it's over 90%. It's it's well over 90% of the time. That isn't gonna happen, really. But if it does, that 10%. But it happens. Or in the really rare case, I opened this game 1 against Malice and they just didn't care. Oh yeah, and it definitely did perform. I had a hand actually one time where I opened shifter, duplicate hand traps, and an RB part, and I shifted a Mitsuyami player, and he just couldn't do anything. And then I just drew a starter for turn, and then it was okay, we're in business here. Summon, lethal, and he had Nibiru in his hand, but I did the rocket play that I mentioned a little bit earlier, so it's not like it came up anyway. But overall, the main deck I like a lot. There wouldn't really be any changes in foreseeable future for my main deck, at least. And the same kind of applies to the extra deck.
There you go.
Alright, going on to the extra deck. 2 Shepherd, 3 Brutes, 3 Rocket. This is standard for the most part. Depending on what supplement engine you're using, these can change around. I know the ones that use up a little bit more, I've seen some people go down to 1 Shepherd at times. But in this particular case, this was fine. No changes for the foreseeable future. And then the extra deck lineup, I'm going to organize this in a way where they're complementary. So these in particular, Clockwork and Barricade, for those that aren't aware, post-siding with Clockwork Knight, you have combos involving these 2 cards where you add the RB continuous spell, you get your Clockwork, and depending on what you see in hand off of the Lambda Cannon, or if you're going up against a matchup where Clockwork isn't good as a floodgate option, you go Barricade, you pitch Clockwork, you pitch an excess card typically, and then you grab Regulus, and it's just an extra Omni Negate onto the end board, and then you get the continuous spell back, the RB one, for your turn 3 crackbacks. And so, overall, these cards are really nice, zero complaint about that. And then the remaining cards in these extra deck is the striker ones, and kind of going into a little bit more in depth about these cards in particular, because there's actually a lot more to say about these. So this was the lineup. Originally, I had Kaina in here over the Barricade, but what I found was I didn't need it really, for the turn 3 pushes. Kaina originally on paper was so Rose, if you're going second, is a 1-card starter. And how you go about that, actually, with this current extra deck lineup is you go summon Rose, summon Hayate. Hayate can mill Cynos, because it's always treated as a Sky Striker card. And then you go Cynos for 5 Rose, and then you summon out Shizuku. Boom, 2 machines, you're in business. And that's also in part why I like specifically Falcon Rocket as much as I do, because if you can't break the board as hard during your main phase 1, the Falcon Rocket comes in and helps clean up the board main phase 2 for situations where you baited a lot out, and if you have to normal a Rose, and then you're able to pivot into your Link 2 lines into a simplified game state, you then, Rocket just kind of helps clean up, and then you set up your board accordingly from there. Whereas Kagari, best Link 1 for pretty noble reasons. And then these two cards in particular, Seek in particular comes up a lot more than Azalea does. So, kind of what we discussed earlier, it's this card, for how expensive it is, isn't like the, oh, it's gonna make your tournament difference all that much. Like, the card did come up a bit though, where if I got Nibiru, I use a Nibiru token, use like something else to help Azalea pop a back row. And that came up against Draco Tail, actually, where if they set their turn 3 plays, Rocket tries to help clean up a bit further, and they set like a duplicate spell like through the Rocket. Azalea can come in, pick off the final turn 3 spell, and they have to be situated onto what they have in hand, which is usually a lot less than what they can set.
Right.
And so going on to the side deck, MVP by far. So for those that aren't familiar with this card is all the way back in 2014. This card, a lot of older heads tend to remember it. Basically, you have to commit your normal summon into this. You don't have any means to hard search it out, like, 7th Tachyon in particular. But it's fine. Like, the reason why this card is so good right now is not only does the common back row that people end on within the engine just cannot check this card. Draco Tails can't use their fusion material effects because they need a set, then they get the bonus effects. And so when you have this card up, like I had some players at the time, they just went like Fimena fuse names during my turn when I have a Danko up. I just could not care less at all about that. And that came up, I think, like 4 times during the YCS. It's like one of those things that, a lot of people weren't aware of this card going into the event, and quite frankly, I don't blame them. Yeah. Like, it was Thursday night when I figured out this card, and I submitted my deck list like half an hour later. And so some things that are slightly different regarding my side deck compared to YCS was this was originally Pancratops, and this was originally Droll and Lockbird. Elevating 2 cards in my side deck I felt like were underperforming a bit. It was definitely those 2 by far. Like, even a lot of Mitsuyami players, they were respecting Droll. A lot of them are remain decking the trap. And so when you Droll and they are able to set up a reasonable enough half board, you're just like, oh, yeah. Like, why did I do that? Right. And Pancratops had the opposite type of deal a bit, where the boards are so overwhelming. Pancratops, I felt like, was underperforming during the event. Originally, and that's kind of where I wish last minute I didn't put in this card like a bit, but I'm glad I did put it in at the end of the day. But because Danko essentially does what Pank is trying to do, just infinitely better, albeit more commitment, sure. But these cards came in because Skullmeister, you can have in going first against like Draco Tail. You can have it like first, second against Mitsu. So it polishes up some siding patterns here and there. And then Parelia is Parelia. It's just kind of just meant to help get you some more cards. And especially if you're going up against a deck like Vanquish Soul Canine, which I saw 2 of. Or even against like Malice, like this card, it was fine, like going forward. And then the rest of the cards that remain the same from the YCS, these. So you usually have a pretty easy, like clean siding pattern with this deck, where usually if you're going first, like the default swap out is swapping out Fua for these 3 cards. But then at times where things, and this is where the differences between my YCS list and the current list really show, if you have a hand trap that isn't as good if you're going first comparatively, like a good example is actually can be like a Ghost Bell against Draco Tail. Something like a Skullmeister can come in to help just, if they have 5 mana names, you can negate one of the sets, use Rocket, polish up the board state a little bit if they play it on your turn 0, and then kind of the end result is, nothing overly substantial happened. It really comes down to their supplement hand traps. And then the Skullmeister for Mitsu as well. But that's kind of, for the most part, the other noble thing about the siding patterns, because people ask me actually quite a bit about it, because the siding patterns is pretty tough with this deck. What I actually side out a lot of the time going second is I actually side out a fair bit of the time all 4 of the hard garnets. And sometimes, though, like depending on the matchup or siding patterns or supplement engine they're using, sometimes I keep in one last stand, because if I'm put under a droll and you would want it. But whereas these 3 for sure go, because the big thing about a lot of this format is you need to prevent the boards or force them to end on a half board where you can, and then you try to like help Danko clear up the board. I never miss these cards when I take them out, whereas with this card, at times when I cut it, like I'm still testing this, like full transparency on whether or not I cut this for sure going second or not. Like it's been like a mixed bag where sometimes I miss it, but then it's like most of the time I don't really. But I likely going forward, I'm going to keep this thing going second, even because droll is just so prevalent everywhere that, if I'm breaking up a board and I have to set up for their turn 3 play, I want my Shepherd to be live for something at least. But for the most part, that kind of just like addresses like the most of the questions I got during the YCS, because the biggest thing I would say kind of take away for now, at least when it comes to this deck, is try to pilot your lines in a way to prioritize your bodies sticking as long as they can. Like I had a lot of games against like Mitsu, for example, first line of play, even though I know they have the negate trap, I would just go activate stage landing, they respond with the trap, for example, to check it, and then I summon my parts, because if they go the Mitsurugi board wipe, they can't destroy the parts at that point. So it's like, it's quite literally, I always tell people, like, the way you have to go about this deck is almost like a hand-by-hand, situation-by-situation. But if you reach a point where you're able to get to your lane 2, lane 3 through disruption, and you play both the rocket and the pile bunker, you just lethal them. And that's why I play them, is because in a hand trap format where so many people go into simplified board states, and that's huge. Like, just you going, I resolved this one link search, now I win the game now, is just such a crazy benefit that it's worth putting in the 2 suboptimal draws. But even then, like, mathematically, I felt fine about it. Nothing else for the deck at the current moment, other than the future releases we'll be discussing a bit.
Okay. Yeah.
So when it comes to the future releases, the biggest elephant in the room everyone's ready for is Carmella.
Yeah.
That card's huge. That card's, I cannot understate, unless we get a new TCG exclusive somehow, like for RB, or somehow makes a different machine supplement engine that much better than Striker engine. Carmilla just makes the Striker engine, I feel like, by far the best supplement you can go. And probably realistically, like, when Carmella comes out, Barricade's probably going to go.
Yeah.
Because Carmelo just needs any 2 effect monsters, which is around the same as Barricade. Sure, you lose the Clockwork into Regulus plays a bit, but the benefit of Carmella is just that astronomical that you're just able to set up your full RB combo with any 2 monsters.
Right.
And for reference, so people just know, like, going forward, how it is you can just go, okay, any 2 machines, you summon your Carmella mills off the engage, and then you go, all right, cool, summon Kagari over Carmella, grab back your engage can grab a drones if you use your normal summon, make Hayate, drones, get Shizuku out, and then boom, RB combo with any 2 names. And I cannot understate, given my hands, like, even looking at the live stream match against the Odeon Fiendsmith, if Carmelo is out, that was combo, which is so ridiculous. Like, literally, I would have just summoned one of the duplicate bells, like special color, normal duplicate bells, summon Carmella, and then you're just off to races from there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So that's exciting, and I feel like that going forward is going to be good.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you coming out and doing this. For people who are watching, we're recording this on Sunday, so we'll probably have the video out in a couple of days after I do some editing on Monday, Tuesday. But yeah, dude, thanks again. This is really cool, and congrats on another amazing performance, dude.
Thank you very much.
Cool. All right.